friends. I want to tell you a little bit about myself today. I feel like this is important to give you the context of who I am because who I am right now is who I am as I begin this next work, which you are watching. My path started really young. I tell people typically that I started martial arts when I was 4 or 5, and I did. But really, what happened to me when I was 4 or 5 was I began to be very curious about some deeply challenging questions. I think I used to blame a lot of folks when I was younger for those conversations and topics being very challenging. But as I get older, I understand more and more they're challenging topics because they're challenging topics. And they were challenging to me, and I wanted to have conversations about them. They were about death and about life. And I wanted to know the answer. And I think I became pretty obsessed at a pretty young age as a result of that. And through that obsession, I was able to kind of track down places where I could find things that looked and felt like answers to me. So to me, I had two really distinct, different models of how to live and how to relate to the world. My mom was a dancer, a yoga practitioner, and a meditator from the time since before I was born. My dad was just about to become a pilot in the Navy when my mom got pregnant with me. And then became an engineer, very into history, and very into sports and competitive communities of game playing and athletics, we'll say kindly. So movement and the idea of physicality, physical strength was kind of always put into my mind. I come from a family with a lot of people who've served in the military. I come from a family with a lot of people who have worked as engineers, scientists, singers, nurses, like things that require you to get good at something. And I think it's probably easy for me to say that I took that for granted. But it definitely put something in me young about the idea that through my own efforts, I could attain some level of growth. And that growth would oftentimes be very difficult. The Great Depression and World War II were really big in my family's consciousness, as well as our, especially on the Sicilian side of my family, the struggle of immigrants to assimilate and become good citizens. So, movement and culture and hospitality have kind of always permeated my life. As a result, I worked in restaurants a lot of the time when I was younger to support myself. But on the other side of it was these, kind of just really intense, obsessive questions about life and death and needing to understand for myself, really needing to find the answers for myself. So I personally, took my understanding of being in a body from pretty young to martial arts, and very specifically meditation was introduced to me pretty young, around 10 or so. I'd say it started becoming an active part of my practice. And then in my teens, understanding through the implications of what was leaving play violence of martial arts to real violence of martial arts, that I should begin very intimately my study of healing arts. And that is when I started researching and getting into different healing modalities that have permeated, just like martial arts practices have permeated my life ever since. So through that, I had built this really, I think, fortunate, amazing base of my childhood of practice, self-growth, service to others, and a relationship to silence, a relationship to individual responsibility of myself, individual responsibility for the consequences of my actions, individual responsibility for the way that I moved through the world. And as a result, the awkwardness of growing up was something that I maybe took very seriously and chose to try to look at as something that I had to participate in. And as a result, that really influenced the way that I would then become a teacher in my teens and early 20s, the way that I would try to build communities around my martial arts practice, my meditation practice, and then eventually why I would have to let those things go in order to seek out apprenticeship with people who could help me to relate to the world in a way which felt fully in alignment with who I was inside. An intense study of Buddhism and Taoism, which started in my early teens and progressed, kind of a real interest in history, a real interest in how and the way things work, why things are built the way they are from a systemic standpoint, studying the way martial arts systems get developed for educational reasons, as well as for kind of personal, cultural, historical interests. The healing arts and meditation led me kind of to mountain mystics and to modern science, to the study of the brain, the study of the body, the study of somatic psychology, the study of anthropology, sociology, the way we work as groups, the way we structure cultures around our needs, the way that we build mythologies and narratives as a result of those things. But always from this view of, I was kind of running around the world. I was on this constant pilgrimage to Asia when I was younger, and then Europe as I got older, kind of around New England within my own place, from teacher to teacher. Had a chance to see a lot of the world, and I've had a chance to learn about my own self in relationship to nature, and through my relationship to nature find a sense of animistic love of the world, of the universe. But always I had these two frames of, through virtuous action we can transcend what might be considered, the profane world. But then also through the descent into nature and what is natural, we can find what is true about ourselves, which is that we are also animals. But always, again, this need to understand, this need to know the answer to some fundamental questions led me, what I believe, at least for me, I can call the mystical experience of the divine. This is important to me because it informs how I tell the story to myself. The learning that I do and the way I experience the learning are different things. But in the mystical experience, as I've sought understanding of life and death for myself, have brought me into touch with the mystical experience, not of God, right? Nothing so specific as a single deity, but into mystical relationship with the universe, with kind of existence, which has brought me into relationship in the way that some people might kind of humorously say namaste. The idea that through the understanding of my connection to the universe, I see the relationship with other differently. I treat people around me differently as a result of that, sometimes needing to pull back rather than be destructive, and sometimes needing to retreat to silence and centering and meditation rather than seeking to push and fill the space with others, but honoring others as they enter my life in a more full and complete way. Putting down the phone for me has been a big thing. Putting down my relationship to television, putting down my relationship to a bunch of things over the last decades as I've sought more and more relationship to the universe, relationship to other, relationship to myself. And from myself, understanding this kind of archetypal story that's always been in my head ever since I was a kid, and I started answering these questions with systems and learning. This idea of the wandering monk, Taoism in particular speaks beautifully of it, poetically, of to wander and to serve others without hope of gain for the self. Not in the self-annihilation, perhaps, that we could easily understand, but out of so much love for self and so much love for the universe that in the service we find the most gain. And this story of how to live in a way which is in constant union with the universe, constant union with sacredness and divine presence. Not of a specific name, not of a specific word or a specific system, but the internal sense of, we see a new shoot of plant come up, the preciousness, the small, tenuous nature of life. So with that, I want to leave the story of me at this place as a journey to now. And the journey from now is a different story than the story that led me till now. And I look forward to creating that story as I go forward. And I look forward to sharing that story as I go. I think this time, I think this place in history is as unique as every other one. And we get the honor of inhabiting this moment in history. Such an important moment. Our moment. And so I thank you for listening to me tell you my story. And I hope that you will join as the story goes forward. And as I hear more of your stories. I hope that the big story, the sacredness of that big, big story that we're all a part of, the human story, can become so much clearer to us all, me and all of us. And in seeing each other's stories, maybe we can start telling some new ones, yeah? Be well.